Let's switch over to adaptogens. I want to list a few, and I want your opinion on them. Some of these I've tried: ashwagandha, rhodiola, and maca. What are your thoughts on that, and how it might apply to the female athlete? So that's ashwagandha, rhodiola, rosea, and maca root.
Yeah, so those tend to be the big three, and Shishandra tends to be the fourth one that a lot of women will try. So ashwagandha is good as a starter for people to feel the ability to become or let go of that tired but wired. Because so many women get into this tired but wired scenario when they're peri into postmenopause because their baseline cortisol is elevated and they have a lot of difficulty sleeping. So if we're using ashwagandha, that can counter the receptors of cortisol to have just enough to get a little bit of stimulus, but not enough to keep them in that sympathetic drive, then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I can sleep better. I feel better. I can counter stressful situations. The only thing with ashwagandha is we also start to see more thyroid disruption in perimenopause, and ashwagandha can interfere with that. If we think about rhodiola, it's one of my favorites because it also is really good at increasing parasympathetic drive and allowing people to withstand more of the life stress without really freaking out. It's also really good for jet lag. Take note, Jose, that, jet lag in the Philippines.
Really? Rhodiola is?
Rhodiola is fantastic. Rhodiola with L-theanine. If you use those two and you use them a half an hour before you're supposed to be asleep, then you're out whatever time zone. So that's a side note.
Okay.
And then maca, it's all right. It's not my fave because it works in some people and it doesn't work in others. That's why it's like, oh, Shishandra is really good. So Shishandra, because so many women end up with brain fog, and I'm kind of like, I forget people's names and that kind of, as you've noticed, Shishandra is really good at bringing in the focus and getting rid of the brain fog. So I often have people start with ashwagandha and Shishandra. And if that doesn't quite work for them, then I'll switch out the ashwagandha and put in rhodiola and Shishandra. Because those two tend to really hit the whole tired but wired and then give focus to get rid of that brain fog.
And what about traditional, Tony, do you have a question? I want to ask about some of the more traditional
No,
stuff.
no, just sounds excellent advice. Just particularly women that are doing more, in our age category or younger, Dr. Stacy, of course, but anything with complex motor skills, still, this sounds like those supplements could be of great value too, for both activation, but that nice level of balance, sympathetic para, but yet alertness too. So these are things I'll consider, because I still have women that I'll train with occasionally who are kickboxing, boxing, and again, motor skill applications are a little bit more complex than just running or cycling. So these supplements seem they may be of value under those circumstances.
Yeah, we have a cheat sheet on all the adaptogens that you can download off our website.
Okay, great.
So, yeah, if you can't find it, let me know and I'll email it to you.
Very good.
Okay. Thanks, Stacy. How about some of the traditional supplements when students take their typical undergrad exercise science or undergrad sports nutrition course, and we're talking about the chapter on sex differences, male versus female. The one supplement that always seems to come up, even though obviously there's got to be sex differences elsewhere, would be iron because of your menstrual period. Mm-hmm. What are your recommendations with iron? And then the other one would be calcium. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on those two?
So iron is really finicky because people are like, oh, I'm really tired and I think I'm low on iron. So they'll take an over-the-counter supplement. And if you're not dosing it properly, it'll make you worse. So a lot of women will they'll get their iron tested. They're sitting at the low end of normal, but doctors won't do anything because they're like, oh, you're in the normal. But a lot of times that's too low for most people, especially active women. We know that there is a menstrual cycle response with hepcidin. So hepcidin is the hormone that regulates iron. Well, actually, when it's upregulated, your body can't absorb iron from the gut very well. It's elevated for 3 to 5 hours after each training session, and it's elevated after ovulation because the body's in a pro-inflammatory response. And with inflammation, hepcidin upticks. So when we're looking at people who are trying to get out of low iron stores, we're like, okay, on the first day of your period, you take iron primarily carbonyl iron because it's the highest bioavailable iron. Take it on the first day of bleeding, take it every other day until ovulation, but you want to take it either first thing in the morning away from training or at night away from training, because we're trying to work with hepcidin. When people are doing that within 3 cycles, they're like, wow, my ferritin is up, I feel great. But people don't know how to dose it properly, especially if they're not under the guidance of someone. And even some physicians are like, here's your iron supplement. And they don't tell them, even regardless of menstrual cycle status, that you need to take it every other day. Because if you take it too often, then your body's like, whoa, too much iron, and hepcidin comes up, and it's a moot point to use it. When we talk about calcium, calcium is interesting because we see a lot of the calcium supplements, they don't do anything. So we have to really look at what are we doing from a calcium intake standpoint. And we want to use a lot of real food. And even leafy greens have calcium. For women who are predisposed to stress reactions and stress fractures, we see that taking one of those 1,000 milligram Tums calcium carbonates before impact training helps reduce the stress reaction response and can improve bone. So these are 2 things that people don't really realize because they're getting their information from physicians or they haven't really dug into the research. So those are the 2 big things that we need to really kind of emphasize out there about calcium and iron.
So when people talk about, hey, you got to take calcium to maintain bone mineral density, that isn't entirely true.
No, because we look at a lot of the studies, if you're just taking calcium, it doesn't do anything.
Right.
You need to have vitamin D, and you also have to have estradiol. So one of the things, like when women are in an amenorrheic state and they're losing bone mineral density and they're told to take calcium, and maybe sometimes they're told to take vitamin D, it doesn't do anything.
And explain to the audience, because if you go back 10, 20 years ago, a lot of people were, I guess, selling or recommending that you take supplemental antioxidants. And now data is coming out that says, maybe you should just get it from your foods. And if you take it supplementally, it doesn't do good things. Tell us what happens when you take these antioxidants supplementally.
Well, I always say that we're not as smart as nature. So if you're looking at a food source of antioxidants, there's things within the food that make the antioxidants work. When you're taking high doses of supplementary antioxidants, it can actually impede adaptations to exercise because we need some oxidation, just the same as we need some inflammation to get adaptation. So when people are doing high doses of antioxidants, it's counterintuitive because adaptive stress isn't just from exercise either, right? So we have stress that occurs all day, every day, and your body needs to learn it. And if we're doing high doses of lab synthetic antioxidants, then we're actually impeding our body's ability to adapt. And we see some data that it can be actually harmful when we're looking at some of the all-cause mortality, and people who are having a high variety diet of fruit and veg end up having less all-cause mortality incidences than those people who are taking an equivalent amount of antioxidants and minerals and vitamins from supplements, because the supplements just don't work.
Yeah, does the supplemental antioxidants, and I haven't read this literature in a while, but does it impede mitochondrial biogenesis? Is that one of the harmful side effects?
Yes.
Which of course would, for an endurance athlete, that's like a death knell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely don't want that. The 2 most popular supplements, creatine and caffeine. What are your thoughts on that for the female athlete?
Creatine is essential. It's a nutrient that every woman should be taking, right? Yeah.
And yet it's hard to get people to take it. It's hard to get
women
to
it's
take
crazy. Personally, I've pushed my social media and I've done so much in the past year trying to get women to understand that creatine is not a bodybuilding supplement, that, it's not harmful. It's essential for brain health. We see clinical studies where people are in severe depression and they increase creatine use and they don't have to use SSRIs because it pulls them out of depression. Why? Because it's so essential for brain metabolism. I have my athletes who have a lot of GI distress use creatine because it increases the mucosal lining integrity. So then they don't end up with GI distress as they're exercising. We know that women have 70 to 80% of the stores that men do. So just by supplementing with that 3 to 5 grams a day improves muscle function, improves brain health, improves cardiovascular health, gut health, all of these things. And there's so many women now who are on some kind of exclusionary diet, so they're excluding some kind of food group, which then decreases the ability for your body to pull in creatine from dietary sources. So creatine super, super important for health. And then you can also look at it from a performance standpoint too. Like if you want to do your traditional dosing without carbohydrate, that significantly improves muscle function. So yeah, can't say enough good things about creatine.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
like
I'm sorry, 3 to 5 grams seems sufficient, Dr. Stacy, on
Absolutely.
that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, for the further, because we don't have a lot of thoughts, and I don't think we look too much at the potential disparity in needs between men and women, and the dosaging has been relatively just constant across the board. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but obviously body weight and full body size, total body size is a variable in that I think we discount all too often and just say, well, if you want the neuroprotective benefits, you got to take 10 grams. But if you weigh 99 pounds or 100 pounds, obviously you wouldn't need that high dose in men.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't do the 10 grams.
Yeah. I have a conversation a lot with one of my friends who's a vet. And she's like, I don't understand dosing in humans because as a vet, I have to be really super specific about the breed, the body weight, the
Right.
body composition, and be really specific amount of medication or whatever I'm doing. But for humans, we're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You're a 180-pound dude. You have this amount of gabapentin, and you're a 120-pound woman. You have the same amount. It's like,
Exactly.